I had to write down like goals for sixth grade. Like these are my goals. And quite literally, my goal, my mom saved this because she thought it was comical. My goal was I'm going to try to not get sent to the principal's office this year. And I think I did it. I actually think I did it, sixth grade. And sixth grade was like this, like up, right? Fifth grade was like I got sent to the principal's office a lot. And then sixth grade, I was like, hey, things are great. And I was in a sixth grade play. That's right. We did Oliver Twist, and guess who was Oliver? Shaboy, right? And it was fun. It was a great time. My best friend screwed it all up, though. We grew up together, like been together since we were 5 years old, and he started the wrong scene. Like, and for those of you that are in theater, you know, like the nightmare that is. Like, he walked out on stage, and his lines were like the end of the play, and we were still in the first act. So he starts this whole scene, and our director quite literally had to come out on stage and be like, sorry, we're going to restart that scene. And he was like petrified. Like still to this day, we talk about it and he gets like sweaty palms, knees weak, arms are heavy, right? Thinking about this moment of like starting the wrong scene. Me, meanwhile, I'm backstage, I'm Oliver, and I'm like, you're messing up my show, Riley, right? It was great though. Sixth grade was awesome. Junior high was junior high. Like I think junior high is always like this massive question mark in life of like, I actually enjoyed it for the most part. I now love junior hires. I worked at summer camp, like I said, for 2 summers with junior hires, and they're the best, right? And 9th and 10th graders is fun because you guys are like not junior hires, but you're not 11th and 12th graders yet. So you're like this weird in-between awesome mix of like, I don't know what this is, but I love it, right? It's like the mystery airhead. Like you're like, I don't know, but I want to try. Yes, that's right. I just called you all airheads. But junior high was great. The trouble was like mediocre, and then 9th grade hit, and I was like this raging ball of hormones and like passion and competitiveness and anger that I did not know what to do with. Some of you relate to that. And I've heard a friend of mine talk about how like high school, a lot of the times when you have these passionate people, like you're like this Ferrari, but you don't know how to control the engine, right? Imagine if I was like giving you guys your first driver's test ever, and I was like, okay, first time behind the wheel, like we're gonna do really great here, and then I set you behind like a Lamborghini. You'd be like, wait, what? Like, I don't even know how to merge lanes. Like, don't give me this car that goes 370 miles an hour. That's how I felt. And my freshman year of high school, was the same like passionate, competitive person I am now, but with like zero maturity and zero understanding of how to handle that. And not that I'm like the world's most mature person now, that's why I work with high schoolers, but like more, I've learned and I've figured out, and the verse that we're tackling today has been a huge part of understanding how to control that like Ferrari engine that is that passion and that is that zeal for life. But my freshman year, second semester freshman year, I was playing basketball, and I was a point guard of our team. And in 1 week of school, like Monday to Friday, I kid you not, Monday to Friday. So Monday starts, I got 3 games this week. I have class like normal. I got 3 technicals. If you know what a technical is in basketball, it's when you get teed up for doing something like either a really gnarly foul. In my case, it was standing in the referee's face and yelling at him because he made the wrong call, right? Yes, this is me being vulnerable and open with you guys. So I got 3 technicals in 1 week. 2 of those games I got kicked out of. And then I got like, I think it was 3 or 4 detentions that exact same week. Which was like either showing up to class late for the 1700th time, or it was like talking back to a teacher. Surprising. Austin likes to talk, right? A teacher would say something, and I'd be like, oh, really? Really? That's what you think? And he'd be like, get out, Austin. I'd be like, frick, right? Like, this happened to me my freshman year of high school, and in 1 week, 3 technicals, kicked out of basketball games because I was angry. I just had this like passion inside of me for sports, and I think it was also like maturing. I went through puberty my like junior year of high school. That was cool. So, but I just had these like, just this rage and passion inside of me that I did not know what to do with. And my parents shut my life down. Like I went from like fun, I can hang out with friends, and I have an iPod. Back when there were iPods and not iPhones. And I could go out on the weekends, and I did kind of what I wanted. Like, my parents trusted me a lot, and I went from that to zero life, like none. So I had to write 3 thank you cards a day. I lost my iPod. I lost my phone. I couldn't go out anywhere, ever. I would literally wake up, go to school, go to practice, come home. Like, my life got shut down for like a month. So 30 days straight of just like nothing, right? Like no interaction with the outside world. I was like, hello? And it was good for me. Like, I look back now and I'm like, thank God, Mom and Dad, thank you for responding to my terribleness in a really appropriate way. At the time, I was like, I hate you, Mom and Dad, right? Because I had that same like passion going on inside of me. But I remember this was one of those verses that my dad made me memorize in this season of life. And this was something that I just had to meditate on. And I don't mean meditate of the like, I mean meditate in the like, I just wanted to sit with this verse and I wanted to understand why the brother of Jesus wrote these words to the church. Fellas, we good? Yep. Cool. Why did James, the brother of Jesus, write these things to the church? Coming off of last week where we talked about temptation, where we talked about trials and considering those pure joy, and then he talks about God being eternal and the gift of life that we have through this God, he then transitions and says this, my dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. This is James chapter 1, verse 19. Hopefully when that video rolls, you guys open up your Bibles, pull out your journals, and you start taking notes along with what we're diving into. Why? So that we can dive into small groups, so that we can have conversations outside of this, so that a month from now, when you have this temptation or this trial, or when you feel the temptation to be angry, or you come off of something and you have just this rage or anger inside, or you feel this loneliness and this bitterness, you don't have to call me and go, hey, what was that verse we were in? You can open up your Bibles, and you can know and understand this is what we're going through. I'm going to challenge you, push you, have those Bibles, have those journals, be taking notes. James 1, chapter 19, my dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, circle, highlight, underline, slow to speak, circle, highlight, underline, and slow to become angry, circle, highlight, underline. Right? This first verse, chapter 119, it sounds like almost this like self-help book, right? Like if I was in Barnes & Noble and I was like just perusing a bunch of different books and it would be like how to love or how to listen. You'd be like, oh, like this is good advice. Like this is just good life advice. Like remove from the Bible to be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. Like you could give that advice to anyone and it'd be good advice. Why? Anatomically, you were created with 2 ears that are already open and 1 mouth and 1 tongue that's hidden behind lips and teeth. Isn't that ironic? Like God, in his infinite wisdom, created you with 2 ears that are already open. Like you don't have to do anything to open up your ears, right? And 1 tongue that's like naturally trapped behind lips and teeth. And yet, how often do we speak before we listen? Do we listen to a friend telling a story and all we can think about is, when's it my turn to talk? We hear something our mom or our dad is saying and it's like, we hear it and we're like, yeah, what? Huh? Is that just me? Am I the only one that ever tuned out my mom? 2 ears, 1 mouth. Ironic that this is just good life advice. But here's the difference, friends. Here's the difference, and here's why it's in the Bible. This is going to be the lens through which we look at this entire talk. Write this down in your journals, in your notebooks. Love equals listening. Love equals listening. And I don't mean this like hot pink Roman candle Hollywood type of love where you get to the end of a rom-com and you're like, oh, they love each other, right? Like, no, I mean love in the sense of John 13:35. Jesus says, a new commandment I give to you. Jesus, if Jesus, the like creator of the universe says a new commandment, my ears are perking up. A new commandment I give you that you love one another just as I have loved you. Jesus just got done washing the disciples' feet, doing this crazy act of service, right? At the time, it would have been the equivalent to like changing the gnarliest, grossest diaper of all time. Now, I don't know if you've changed a diaper before, but it's disgusting. okay? And the reason I say it's disgusting is because Jesus' disciples' feet would have been nasty. Walking in the streets those days, there's like sewer and crap and garbage and all this stuff. And then Jesus does the act of a servant, gets down on his knees, washes their feet, and then says, a new commandment I give you, that you love one another, just as I have loved you. And then he says this to his disciples. In John 13:35, by this you will be known if you have love for one another. By this you'll be known as my disciples, if you have love for one another. He literally says, like, the marking factor of you as a Christian, as a Christ follower, is the love that you have. So the reason I'm going to give this like really practical life advice is not so that you just go out and be better people. Do I believe this is going to make you a better person? Absolutely. But this is a gateway to show people, to demonstrate people the love that you have for our God, and in understanding and receiving his sacrifice on the cross and in his resurrection. That's the gospel, my friends. The good news is the Bible is not about all these things that you have to do to get to God. The Bible is about all that God did to get to you. The gospel is the good news that there's a way back to the God of the universe, that we can now live life and life abundant. I joke about this all the time, but like sometimes I think we think the gospel is like a get out of jail free card, right? Anybody play Monopoly? Anybody ever played the game of Monopoly? Okay, I feel like that's kind of dying out a little bit, but Monopoly's awesome. And I remember getting that get out of jail free card. It like made me feel invincible, right? I was like, I can't go to jail, right? Sometimes I think we treat the gospel that way. Of like, I went to Whitewater, or in junior high or in elementary school or at camp or whatever, I like said the prayer that the preacher up front told me to pray. Now, like, hell's out of the picture. I'm not going to hell anymore. I get to go to heaven, and now I can do whatever I want. It's like, you're missing the point. Like, Jesus didn't die on the cross and resurrect himself from the grave just so that you could show up at the pearly gates and go, remember Whitewater, Peter? Like, let me in, bro. No, the gospel, the good news is that you can live life differently now. That life's not about you. Life's not about me. Life is about demonstrating the love that Jesus had on the cross in his death and resurrection through the way that we live. By this you'll be known as my disciples, by the love you have for one another. So what does this have to do with James chapter 1:19? Love equals listening. Verse 20 says this, because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. Therefore, get rid of all moral filth and the evil that is so prevalent, and humbly accept the word planted in you, which can save you. See, listening is the bridge in which love travels over. Listening is the bridge in which love travels over. And here's what I mean by that. We can demonstrate our love by the way that we listen. My dear brothers and sisters, he says, be quick to hear. Why? Be quick to hear, because this is how we love. Being quick to hear is how we love. Number one, underneath being quick to hear, write down, be a good question asker. Be a good question asker. Nothing is worse than getting home from like a vacation or getting home from a break or getting home from like being with your family or something like that, and you walk up to your friend and you're like, hey, how was so-and-so? How was camp? How was winter break? How was summer break? Whatever it is. And then they just go off, right? They're like, blah, 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 blah. And then they're like, see ya, and walk away. And you're like, wait, but what about my break? Right? What would it look like for us to be better question askers? Be a good question asker. Why? Because asking questions puts the attention on someone else. Being a good listener puts the attention on someone else. And you and I, right, if we're completely honest with ourselves, it's really easy to have the attention on me, right? Like left to myself, like my autopilot is me focused. I walk in somewhere, I wake up thinking about me. I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, I'm lonely, I'm tired. Why does nobody see me? Am I cool enough? I spend a lot of time thinking about me. Being a good question asker, being quick to hear, naturally puts the attention on someone else. don't just wait for your turn to speak. While you're being quick to hear, while you're listening, don't just wait for your turn to speak. You ever been in a conversation where like you feel like you're talking and the other person's just like chomping on the bit waiting for their turn to speak? And like the second you finish, they're like, "Ma!" And you're like, "Whoa, okay." What would it look like, friends, 9th and 10th graders, for you guys in the midst of conversations with anybody to not just be waiting for your turn to speak? Being quick to hear looks like listening, actually listening, and not just waiting for your turn to speak. I think this one is like genuinely easier when we're just in conversations with friends. How about when you're arguing? Any of you ever argued with a sibling before? Yeah, that's like, is the Pope Catholic? Like, does a bear crap in the woods? Like, yes. Like, we argue with our siblings. How many of you argued with your parents before? Yup. Guaranteed, mom and dad. And when mom's yelling at you, or when dad's yelling at you, or a sibling's yelling at you, how often do we just listen, waiting for our chance to turn back? They say a point, and you're like, "Ooh, I'm going to get you on that one," right? Your parents or your mom, they say something that rubs you the wrong way, and you're just waiting, right? You're like that horse that's like at the gate in the horse races, and as soon as that gate opens, you're like, through. Right? One of those rabbits, one of those like greyhound dogs that looks really weird. Like you're just waiting. And the second mom stops speaking, you're like, boom. Were you actually listening if all you were doing was waiting for your turn to speak? Heck no. In your friendships, in your families, at home, that's going to be the hardest one, guaranteed. With mom, with dad, with siblings, in the midst of an argument, how do we listen in such a way that we're not just waiting for our turn to speak? A good way to practice that is to do it when you're calm. If you do it when you're calm a lot, in the midst of an argument, it's going to be a lot easier. Practice it this week. Practice it today. Listen to your friends. Listen to stories without just waiting to speak. Number 2, be slow to speak. Number 1 was be quick to hear. This is how we love. Number 2 is be slow to speak. This is coming out of verse 19. When we're quick to speak, we're not loving. When we're quick to speak, we're not loving. Be slow to speak. Be quick to hear. Quick to hear, slow to speak. When we're quick to speak, we're not loving. Here's what I mean. When we're quick to speak, I think attention and focus goes really, really quickly on us. It really quickly goes on me. Right? We know these people. We know, like, when you're in a circle, when you're in a small group, when you're in just friends scenarios, the person that's always quick to speak, right? Like the person that's kind of that one-upper maybe. Ever experienced a one-upper before where you're like, I lost 3 teeth last week. And they're like, cool, I lost 5. And you're like, oh, okay. Right? Like being slow to speak means that you're being quick to listen, and listening equals love. 2 quotes I want to read to you. One is out of Proverbs 17:28. Notch that down in your journals and your notebooks. Proverbs 17:28 says this: even fools are thought wise if they keep silent, and discerning if they hold their tongues. Even fools are thought wise if they keep silent, and discerning if they hold their tongues. Abraham Lincoln said it in a similar way. He said, it's better to remain silent and be thought a fool than to speak and remove all doubt. I love that quote. It's better to remain silent and thought of a fool. Like if you're sitting in a room and everybody's like, I don't really know what that guy means, and you stay silent, and then you open your mouth and they're like, oh, yep, he's stupid. Better to remain silent. And I don't mean don't ever speak up. This is not me giving you a license for like, well, Austin said never to speak, and so I just never say anything in small group. No. It doesn't say never speak. It just says be slow to speak. What would it look like for us, 9th and 10th graders, to be slow to speak, to be quick to listen? And in that, we're practicing love. In our listening, we're practicing being loving. Why? Because we hear out other people. We care about other people. We genuinely lean in and listen and understand what people are saying. Why? Because listening is the bridge in which love travels over. What if you guys, 9th and 10th graders, just blew the expectation out of the water for how good of a listener a high schooler is? And in the midst of that, you opened up a bridge to tell somebody the gospel, the good news that is Jesus. Why? Because you listened better. You didn't open your mouth. We're really quick to open our mouth. We're really quick to talk about others. We're really quick to just tell our stories and how great we are. Why? Because we're trying to puff ourselves up. But what if it wasn't about me? Back to the beginning. What if the freedom of the gospel was, life's not really about me, and so I can be quick to listen, and I want to put the platform and light on others, not on myself. The last one says this: be slow to become angry. So number 1 was be quick to hear. This is how we love. Number 2 was be slow to speak. When we're quick to speak, we're not loving. And number 3 is be slow to become angry. Be slow to become angry. Here's what I mean by that. Anger derails love. Anger derails love. How do I know that? Because in the very next verse, in James chapter 1, verse 20, it says, because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. Therefore, get rid of all moral filth and evil that is so prevalent. Oh, wait, where did the moral filth and evil come from? It came from our anger. Have you ever left this place after being in worship, after being like in a small group, and you walk away and you're like, that was so amazing? Or you go to camp and you're like, that was so amazing. Or you're a part of Fuel 910 in any way. And then you go home and your sibling or your mom or your dad is driving you nuts and you just blow your top. And in your anger, what's produced? Moral filth and evil. It's almost like this other version of you that you just forget everything that happened in that other room, that other place called church, and you just lose it. Anger can derail love. See, I play in a flag football team with Chris Hilken, actually. And Chris is my quarterback. I play wide receiver. And Chris, like really early on in our league, like almost warned me, because him and I are very competitive people. And in this league, like there aren't very many people that go to church. And yet North Coast is big enough, and Chris, like speaking on the weekends and everything, like he's like, you just never know who's out here. Like you never know if someone could have heard like your message, or someone has a kid that goes to Fuel 910. Like you just got to be careful with how you play sports. And I needed to hear that. Why? Because freshman Austin got kicked out of basketball games. Guess what? I'm still the same Austin. I still feel the same fire and like rage and anger inside of me. Like I quite literally, I told you guys this on Wednesday, like my family's just competitive. My dad made my mom cry in the game of Monopoly. True story. Like we get sweaty playing ping pong. Like I feel a competitive, I'm in the softball league on Monday nights with Paige and her church. And I go to softball and it's like the dumbest, like cheesiest, it's slow pitch softball and it's fun. And I still get like worked up and like inside, and on the outside I'm like, slow to speak. Quick to listen, slow to become angry. Why? Because I still feel that competitiveness inside me. This isn't something that I've like mastered and figured out. This is something that I still meditate on and go, I need to learn this. I need to be better at this. Why? Because listening equals love, and anger derails love. If I were on that flag football field with Chris Hilken and I just blew my top, I just chewed out the ref, right? I caught a touchdown and I know it was a touchdown. And he goes, nope, you were out of bounds. And I just turn to him and I just scream at him. And then I walk up to him afterwards and go, hey man, I'm a pastor at North Coast Church. Like, would love for you to come. Like, you have a 9th grader? No way, I'm a 910 pastor. Like, you should bring your kid. He's going to look at me like, are you psycho? Like, I'm not bringing my kid to your program. You just yelled at me. In one instance of anger, friends, one instance of anger on a flag football field could derail my entire opportunity to tell that guy about Jesus. Do we understand the weight of that? Do we understand why James is saying be slow to anger? That's a hypothetical situation. Let me tell you a real situation. A week ago on Sunday, this is 7 days ago, we played in a tournament, and I played all day. We played 4 games. I got out there at like 2:30 in the afternoon. I got home at like 8 p.m. feeling sorer than I've felt since like Hell Week in college soccer. And we played all day, and we won our first 3 games, and our 4th game came down to the wire, and we lost by 2 points in the championship game. Now, you might be saying, like, it's just flag football, Austin, get over it. Like, you don't understand how competitive I am. I hate losing. I don't care if it's chess or flag football. And this isn't like a flag football league where everybody's like, ooh, dolly dandy, like I'll pull your flag, high five. Like there's like referees out there. Half these guys played college football. Like it's like gnarly. I got hit hard by this dude that was like 3 times my size last week. And I'm like, you're like, it's flag football. And I'm like, yeah, he still crushed me. Like it gets heated and it gets competitive. We've been out here all day busting our butt and we lost by 2 points. And I walked off the field pissed. And in my anger now, I know for me, I'm like, I don't want to explode. And so I just shut down. I just went inside myself. And Chris Hilkins walking 10 steps behind me, and I'm just walking in front of him. I didn't wait for him. I just walked off the field. And I was just quiet. And I sat down and took my cleats off and put my shoes on. Everybody's kind of jabbering, talking, whatever. Paige was there, my fiance. Talked to her a little bit. And then I got in my car and I drove home. Now, you might think to yourself, like, oh, like, good job. You didn't yell at a referee or anything. But in the midst of my anger, in the midst of my, like, getting so caught up in a flag football game, I completely lost perspective of what was going on. I missed my teammates. I didn't talk to them. I didn't have a conversation with them afterwards. So much so that Chris had to sit down in my office with me the next day on Monday. This is less than a week ago. And go, bro, when you just stay quiet like that, like it makes me think that you're pissed at me. And I was like, well, I kind of was pissed at you. And we had to stop and we had to talk. And he's like, I spent that night just being frustrated with like, why are you mad at me? Like, what's going on? Like, can we not play sports together? And I, in my anger, because I got angry and I went quiet, I missed an opportunity to love my teammates. I missed an opportunity for love to travel over the bridge of listening because I wasn't listening. I was just so caught up in me and being self-centered and angry at a stupid flag football game that I missed it. My anger derailed my love. And so don't hear me saying, friends, like, I have this all figured out. This is how you need to do it. No, I'm teaching this from a perspective and a point of view of I, as a 25-year-old, need to do this better. Why? Because I'm passionate about the gospel going out and life change being created, and the gospel's not going out when I'm self-centered and focused on me. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, well, I don't play flag football and I'm not competitive, so this isn't an issue for me. Check yourself somewhere else. Where in your life are you slow to listen and quick to speak and quick to anger? I want to close on this. Our flesh responds quicker than our spirit. Our flesh responds quicker than our spirit. And this is a lifelong journey, friends. Our autopilot, because we live in a sinful, fallen world, our autopilot is always going to be push, and I'll push you back. Yell at me, and I'm going to yell louder. Something doesn't go my way, and I'm going to erupt. Our flesh responds quicker than our spirit. However, you, follower of Jesus, disciple of Jesus, sitting in this place, have the spirit of the resurrected God living inside of you. Galatians 5:16, one of my life verses, says this. So I say, walk by the Spirit, and you will not gratify the desires of the flesh. For the flesh desires what is contrary to the Spirit, and the Spirit what is contrary to the flesh. They are in conflict with each other. We live in a world where freshman Austin Payne getting kicked out of basketball games is still 25-year-old Austin Payne that has this flesh and spirit combating each other. But I want to do everything I can do in my power with the Holy Spirit to be a beacon of light to a very dark watching world. And in my anger, in my quickness to speak, in my slowness to listen, I'm not being that light. I'm not being that witness. And there's this flesh and spirit conflict that's going on. How do I combat that? I walk by the Spirit. Guess what? Walking is a daily thing. Daily, I need to decide, today I want to walk by the Spirit. I want to be quick to listen. I want to be slow to speak and slow to become angry. Why? Because listening equals love, and love is how we're marked as disciples of Jesus.